Here's a story that I've watched play out more times than I can count. A CHRO walks into the boardroom. They have a very compelling case, an AI-powered talent intelligence program, and it's only going to cost $1.8 million. So when the board asks, what is it going to do? Well, it's going to solve all of our problems. It's going to lower the time to fill, increase candidate quality, and it's going to give our managers and recruiters some time back. But let's fast forward 18 months. What happens to the metrics? Well, time to fill is flat. Hiring actually went down, and managers are absolutely complaining about the system. And guess who gets the blame? CHRO points to the vendor. Now, if I could speak directly to that CHRO, I would tell them it's not the vendor's fault. It's yours. All right, look, when this happens, and it happens a lot, the first instinct is always to point to the technology, the platform, the new system. And if it's not blaming the technology, then you're blaming the program manager, the implementation, or the change management plan. And look, I get it. That's where you spent the money, and that's where the energy went. And that's the most visible place to look. But here's the thing. Every single person in that organization diagnosed this as a technology problem, and that's exactly why nothing changed. In my book, The Futurist, I discuss the 5 mindsets that I think every CHRO and HR pro is going to need in order to remain relevant in the age of AI. And in the example in the opening of the video, well, everyone was flying at the wrong altitude. They were down at the 5,000-foot view about platform features. They assumed that these features would solve their problems. But what they really needed was someone that was flying at the 30,000-foot view and asking completely different questions. So in my book, I talk about the 5 mindsets and what I call the altitude model. I want to show you what that looks like in real life using this as a case study. So the first mindset is the architect. And the architect doesn't look at the symptom. They actually look at the structure underneath it. And when you look at the structure under an AI implementation, what do you find? So if we look, the platform is matching candidates directly to job requisitions, and it was doing it pretty well. The problem is what it's matching against. Pull the requisition data. What do you find is that 67% of job recs feeding this AI are either vague, they're at the wrong level, or they're copied from 3 years ago. And quite honestly, I could spend an entire video on how I hate how job descriptions have become job advertisements. And that's what you might be dealing with as well. It's hard to understand what skills are needed whenever the job description is really just a marketing ad. And what's worse is that they don't actually describe the skills that are needed for the role, they describe a fantasy. So as you can see, the AI is not underperforming. It's doing exactly what you asked it to do. It's finding the candidates who match the specifications, but the specifications were what was broken. And I've said it 1,000 times, AI does not fix broken processes. It only accelerates them. So as you can see, it's not a technology problem, it's a structural problem. And that's where the architect mindset comes in. They see that immediately because they're always asking, what are we actually building here? And what's the foundation? And is it sound? So once the architect names the structural issue, then you drop into the next altitude, which is the engineer mindset. Now, the engineer doesn't look at the whole system. The engineer looks at the seams, at the gaps, at the handoff points, where ownership gets blurry and failure accumulates quietly. And in this case, the seam is at the requisition process. More specifically, what happens between the moment a hiring manager decides that they need someone and the moment that a polished, accurate job description that is a scorecard hits the platform? Who owns that handoff? What does quality look like there? And what signals exist to tell you when a rec is garbage before it even starts hitting the system? The answer in most organizations, none. The requisition goes in. AI picks it up. No one does any kind of checking. Or worse, you use a standardized job description that really has not been updated over the last 5 years. The engineer mindset, they are naturally gravitating toward that seam because they understand that that builds a signal and it creates a standard. It's not complicated, but it does require someone who's willing to get into that operational detail and stopped accepting what is just status quo as being inevitable. So if the architect understands the organization as a foundation and systems built on top of it, the engineer goes one step lower and understands where those gaps are to get those systems working and working efficiently. So now here's where it gets interesting, because while the engineer is fixing the seam, that scientist mindset is asking the question that no one wants to hear. Is time to fill even the right metric? And if you've watched any videos, you know I loathe time to fill. I want you to think about it for a second. The whole business case for this $1.8 million platform was built on cutting time to fill. That was the number. That was the promise. That was the metric of gold that we were going to watch. But the time to fill is a speed metric. It tells you how fast you filled a seat. It tells you nothing about whether or not you hired the right person, which is candidate quality. So the scientist mindset, they go and they start running the numbers. What predicts business outcomes here? It's not time to fill. So what is it? Is it 90-day retention? Is it the ramp up time to full productivity? Is it hiring manager satisfaction at the end of the 6-month mark? So let's just say you look at those numbers and they're flat. And in some manager populations, they're getting worse. The conclusion? Well, AI just made your organization faster at the wrong thing. So now you've got a structural problem, an operational seam and gap handoff problem, and a measurement problem. 3 different altitudes, 3 different diagnoses, and none of them visible from a single vantage point. That's exactly why this altitude model matters. You can't fix a multi-level problem if you're only focused on a single layer. So once you've got the diagnosis, the real diagnosis, not the story that people were telling themselves, that's whenever the chief operating officer or the COO mindset comes in. Because the COO mindset is going to naturally ask, where's human capital being deployed right now, and is it the right use? Now, pull the data on how recruiters are spending their time, and what you find almost consistently in organizations that have made this kind of an AI bet is that recruiters are spending somewhere between 50 to 65% of their time managing requisition quality, chasing hiring managers for clarification, rewriting vague job specs, and doing the work that never should have left the hiring manager's desk. The AI was supposed to free up recruiter capacity, but instead it moved the garbage management problem downstream and made recruiters responsible for cleaning it up before they could feed the system. That's a misallocation, full stop. So the COO mindset, they reframe that investment. The platform is not the problem. It's the human capital surrounding it in the wrong place doing the wrong work. So in my book, in the COO chapter, I actually go through the value of work matrix. So think of impact and focus, and it's 4 different quadrants. The COO naturally thinks in these, and it starts moving human capital, FTE, into each one of those boxes relative to the data that they're getting. The COO mindset understands that the fix isn't about technology. It's more about deliberate redeployment of attention, focus, and quality. And it starts with the hiring manager and the job description. All right, we've gone from architect to engineer to scientist to COO. We're going down in altitude. Now we're getting at the ground level with the coach. Now, whenever I say the coach, a lot of HR people go, oh, I've got that mindset. I'm not talking about the coach mindset that you're probably defining. The coach mindset has really hard discussions, and everything is driven around driving enterprise value. So the coach doesn't go to the hiring managers and say, hey, your job rec needs to get better. Because let's face it, how many times have you had that kind of conversation with the hiring manager? You need to do better on creating a better job description, and nothing works. So the futurist mindset, that coach, they come in with data. As an example, let's just say there are 15 hiring managers in this organization who account for 80% of the bad requisition data. And when you pull their outcome data, their 90-day retention, their ramp-up time, their quality of hire scores, there is a direct and documented measurable line between the quality of their job specs and the quality of the people that are sitting in the seats in their roles 6 months later. That's a behavior to outcome mapping, and you can connect that specific behavior with a very specific outcome. So as you can see, the coach is able to make this not an HR conversation, it's more about a business conversation, and those hit differently with the hiring managers. So let's come back to the CHRO in our example. They didn't have a technology problem. They actually had a systems problem. It was a structural issue that AI only exposed because it made the broken process faster and more visible. So the organizations that figure this out, they're not the ones with the best technology stack. They're the ones with the HR leaders who know how to change altitudes using each of the 5 mindsets. And that is a perfect example of the futurist mindsets and how all of them interact to be able to diagnose the right problems and drive the organization forward. It's not a function. It's not a job title. It's a completely different way of operating. If you're interested in learning about all 5 of the mindsets, you can click the link below and be updated for whenever the book drops in September of 2026. I'm Trent Cotton, your human capitalist. Remember to invest in yourself because no one's going to do it quite like you do. Hey, it is Trent Cotton, the human capitalist. I am so excited. I am working very hard to get the new book called The Futurist out by September of 2026. Now, a lot of work to do, a lot of editing, but in this book, I go through the 5 mindsets that I think every HR professional is going to need in order to remain relevant in the age of AI. Those are the architect, the COO, the engineer, the scientist, and the coach. If you've read any of my other books, you know that it is going to be filled with a lot of stories, a lot of data, and it's meant to make you uncomfortable, but more importantly, it's made to make you evolve. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more, you can do two things. First, make sure that you go and click the link in the details and put your email in so that way you're updated for whenever the book drops. And if you're kind of curious where you stand on the 5 mindsets, you can go to trentcotton.com/futurist start here, or just go to trentcotton.com. There's a Futurist tab, and then scroll down to the middle of the page and there's an assessment. It'll evaluate where you stand in each of the 5 mindsets. So I look forward to going on this journey with you, and I hope that you will register and buy the book when it drops. So see you soon.